This is the Ecommerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Hello and welcome to the Ecommerce Braintrust podcast. I'm Jordan Ripley, Director of Retail Operations here at Acadia. I'm sitting in today for our typical host, Julie Spear. We've got an awesome topic today with two of our experts on the team. So we have Julian Galindo. He's our Senior Account Manager and he oversees a lot of the brand strategy for some of our largest brand partners. And then we have Laurie Tovo, who's a member of our media team and has a special affinity for the role that branding plays within a larger media strategy on Amazon. And we'll be diving into a topic with the both of them that's not exactly new, but has increased in importance over the years. And that topic is, to what extent do I consider Amazon a branding channel versus a performance-driven sales channel? And there's been a lot of recent developments around this that might make us reconsider where we stood on this historically. So I'm excited to get into it. With that, welcome, Julian. Welcome, Laurie. So happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so nice to be here with both of you.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for the opportunity, and I think it'll be a good conversation. Looking forward to it.
I agree. So let's get into it. First, just like we talked about this in the opener in the introduction, but I think historically, like brands, agencies, people in the industry have considered Amazon as a sales channel first and a branding channel second. And there are always branding elements to it, but it's always, if we think about it relative to other channels, has felt like a down the funnel kind of direct response, performance driven sales channel. If we think about back to particularly like legacy vendor accounts, right? This would be just one other wholesale account that they had among their many. So there's this temptation to kind of succumb to the inertia and just treat Amazon as a distribution channel for customers to find your brand once they know the brand and they're just looking to buy, right? So there's been a lot of changes around that we'll get into today. But before we get into that, you guys have a bunch of great insights. And I'd like to kind of challenge this entire idea, which is if I'm a brand and all of my lower funnel metrics seem great, right? Like I have a good ROAS, my conversion rate is solid, my margin is fine. Why should I care about the idea of branding at all?
So I think that's a fair question, but I also think that it's one that is kind of like almost like a little bit of an old school mentality, right?
Yeah.
And so, Amazon is, as we know, is kind of the biggest, online marketplace for people to come and shop, and having your brand be like the presence of cohesion between like one platform to the other is super important. And also distinguishing yourself from the competition on Amazon and making sure that you're presented as like a reputable brand and like what you stand for is super important. And I think in the past, it's always been kind of treated as like, no offense, but like a Macy's or a Sears catalog where it's like plug and play and everything's the exact same. And so we don't really need to think of like how we present ourselves to shoppers. It's just put our stuff up there, people will find it and buy it, and I think that has changed, more so in the last few years, where now it's make sure that people are getting the experience that they expect from you, or they're learning about you even for the first time on Amazon.
Right. Yeah. And so like to kind of summarize the take here is like, maybe you're looking at your ROAS, maybe you're looking at your conversion metrics, but that's not telling the entire story because the presence of Amazon has become so large relative to other channels. Like you're having an upper funnel brand exposure that you may or may not be paying attention to, but you should be paying attention to it.
Yeah, totally. I think also what's important to remember is like, what is your goal as a brand, as a company? Like you might have a great metrics, great ROAS, but how long has it been? How long can you continue with this metrics? While you continue with those metrics, more brands are coming, more sellers, more vendors that are investing in branding. And if you're not, at some point, those metrics are not going to be enough. So you have to think about your long-term goal here and start investing slowly. So, the investment is not just everything up front, but you've been growing it for years. And when everybody is coming, you have a strong brand already. So it's less of this big gap to jump into being competitive because you've been competitive. You've been out there for so long already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's like, it points to, I think, a key distinction here, which is, treating Amazon as a sales channel. And if you're really performance driven, that could be like short-term decision making. I can flip on sponsored ads today and they'll get sales tomorrow. I can't build a brand today that's going to resonate with a customer tomorrow. And I think that's what
Exactly.
you're getting here is like the work on this is done in advance if you're going to really capitalize on the benefits from it.
Yeah.
And something that both of you kind of hinted at that I liked is, no channel anymore exists in a vacuum, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have somebody that's only looking at my Sears catalog. And that's
Correct.
the only way they're engaging with my brand. And so I'm curious, both of you work with a lot of our brands and go through these conversations of brand building all the time. What are the kind of low lift things that you start to advise brands on where maybe they're, suboptimal in terms of reflecting their brand on Amazon? Like, what are the initial easy but high impact things that they could do to start riding that ship?
Yeah, I think like the quickest thing that they can do is just make sure that there's cohesion between their products off Amazon and on Amazon. And yes, there are going to be certain brands that have products that are exclusive to their, D2C site, and that's fine. But the ones that are the same, customers should have the same experience. So if you already have, or if you're not using the same assets on Amazon that you have on your website, like you should be. Or, if you're thinking about it in the other way with like newness, building assets to fit what's needed on Amazon for, standing out and capitalizing on conversions, because you can easily repurpose those assets, in on other platforms, whether it's social media, D2C, like Walmart. But I think just, that's the easiest thing, is looking at what you have available and are you using it everywhere, in the same fashion, because that just keeps the cohesion again.
Yeah, that's something that probably if you're in the creative space, you've encountered a lot, but if you're not in the weeds, is less obvious, is that like, because Amazon is a more nascent channel, brands are used to developing assets that they know for social or they know for D2C. Correct. And then they try to like mash them into Amazon. And you're recommending that's like Amazon's the most restrictive here, design to that and work backwards.
Because if you think about it, you could build a carousel of infographics for Amazon, and those are easily usable on a social media post, or you could bring those to your D2C listing and there's no issues, right? But when you try to go from outside of Amazon onto Amazon, there's all of the restrictions, or the image is great, but there's not enough selling points for people who are shopping on their phone, or not like going for the same thing versus the other sellers on the platform that are doing these things, with these infographics and really driving home all of the benefits and features of a product. And so that's the need on Amazon for sure.
Yeah, Laurie, I'm curious how this plays out on the media side of things, like how you typically kind of coach clients through this migration of assets.
Well, what's very interesting is we have a lot of campaigns now that are more focused towards visual content rather than just, keyword targeting. And we have a lot of sponsor brand videos that are working really well. And clients already have those videos that they're using somewhere else. And you can just a little tweak, just crop the video to show really what's the most important in the product. And you can use that. And then you can repurpose all of this content. They spend a lot of time and money creating content for other channels, and you just reformat it, put it on Amazon. Same with UGC. If you have social media, if you have influencers, use that and put it in your product page. And we can use it in the product page, in the campaigns, in the display ads. Like, you can use it as much as you want, and you already have it. So why not do it?
Yeah.
I think that's the question.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing, this is an out of left field question, but a thing that I see a lot of buzz around in the industry is like the Gen AI creative elements that Amazon has rolled out. And like my perception is those are new, relatively untested. But do you guys have experience with this? Is this something that you're familiar with any of your brands, or what's your take on like the role that might play currently?
I think it's interesting that they're rolling stuff like that out, but I think it's very obvious when you look at some of the
Sure.
creatives that come out of the platform, out of the tool, where, it just doesn't look natural. And yes, I think it's a benefit to, maybe a smaller brand who's like really just trying to get going and they don't have, a creative agency or a really strong internal creative team that's capable of like pumping out a bunch of infographics or even photo shoots to get the right products. Like, yes, that's a benefit, but I think again, it's very obvious at times when it's being used. And so, I'm sure it'll get cleaned up in the future, but for right now, I think it's best to continue on with almost like what's been done, in terms of building creative assets or setting up new shoots to get what you need for a listing.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to love, I was thinking like all the times you would go to kind of this like random manufacturing brands and you'd see the Photoshop efforts of the, the person like holding a tumbler like on an igloo or something crazy.
Right.
And so I feel like Gen AI is going to open up a whole new can of worms. So it's just bonkers product.
And the color of the cup that they're holding is just like so bright compared to the photo. There's no shadow. So
Laurie, have you played around with these at all? Like for ad assets? Yeah.
Absolutely. I love anything that, is AI and visual content. So I tried, of course. It doesn't look good. Okay. It doesn't, but that's okay.
All right. More to come.
But that's okay. It's the beginning. And the way I see it going is like you have those modules now in the stores where you can have AI generated for it. You have those generated content in the sponsored brands. And I think that the more you fit it, the more it understands your brand. At some point, it's Amazon that's going to generate all of the content for you based on what the customer wants. So it's the beginning. It's not looking the way we want, but I think it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to use it and try to work with it while it's growing.
Yeah. I feel like that's the sort of trend with AI generally is everyone thought it was this panacea and it's really like an augmentation that requires a lot of oversight. But okay, well, let's set that aside. That's fascinating. But thinking about this through the lens of sort of brand maturity, where you have those brands that are just starting this journey that you kind of spoke to of like, okay, repurpose your assets, kind of reconfigure your design work streams to like put Amazon towards the front. But then you have this whole other cluster of brands who have made the changes or made the investments to be ready to, really invest in branding. And so they have PDPs that have good A+, good videos, good content, good SEO copy and that sort of thing. And they're less in catch-up mode. They're in steady state and they're trying to understand where they prioritize investment, right? And I think that's where it gets interesting, but also challenging is like, there's always down the funnel stuff that I can do. Like I can A/B test the content on my listings and I can, try to figure out like, where are my customers churning? How do I merchandise them better? All those sorts of things where it's like you're squeezing more juice from your existing on platform optimizations. But how do you approach this for these brands where it's like, okay, do you try to squeeze more blood from that stone of like down the funnel performance versus like, okay, we got to shift and go upper funnel, starting to get net new customers, like get into a tangential market, that sort of consideration. Like, how do you even approach that with your brands? I'm curious.
I think the important thing to remember is that like in e-commerce and on Amazon specifically, you're always going to want to be testing something, right? And you're also always going to need to be thinking ahead, because if you're at the top of the category, like number one product, eventually people are going to start replicating that product, if they're knockoffs. So they're going to come for you, right? And eventually you're going to have to kind of reinvent yourself. And what are you going to do? How do you approach that? How do you maintain your position and fight off the competition? Is it releasing a new colorway of the same product to, spark interest? Is it launching a new product within the same category that is, got some other feature? And so always thinking ahead of, product development or like a line extension, conversation. And that realistically can happen almost on like a quarterly basis, depending on what's in the pipeline for brands. And so you always need to be thinking, okay, this is coming. And I also need to think of how I'm going to position this new product, which if it's a variation, you can, get some positive traction with an existing listing. But if it's brand new, like it's going to cost you a lot of money to grow that product. You're going to need to think of how you're going to put this in front of people, like on your storefront or with ads or the investment in content. So you kind of always have to keep that top of mind
Right.
as a brand.
So like, it's like from your perspective, Julian, this is like, if we think of brand penetration in a given category, a lot of times this is, product led. I have an assortment that identifies well with these set of customer needs. And to expand that customer base, a lot of times it's like, all right, what is the next cohort of customer needs that I can break into via newness, via new product development?
Right. And is it even a new category, right?
Sure.
And so if you've dominated one category and you're like, we're developing something else to tap into a new category that we think is, our next go-to, there's a lot that goes into that, especially in trying to grow from the bottom to the top.
Yeah. So Laurie, I'm curious about your perspective of this, because we talked with Julian about like product-led ways to expand your brand presence in a given category. But I think a lot of the work that you do on the media side is to look at this from like a customer behavior perspective and like how people are engaging with me at various sections of the funnel. Can you talk a little bit more about how you do that analysis?
Yeah, there's a lot of new metrics that are being released. Like Amazon has those brand analytics with more details on the customer behavior and what stage of the funnel they are. And those are metrics that can be leveraged into different messaging, for example, or to introduce a new product. You know that you have people that have bought from you before, from your brand, but you want to introduce a new product to those people that already know you, you will talk to them in a different way. And now we have all of those metrics that are becoming more and more available. And this is the part where we can tap into this new, it's not really a new stage of the funnel, but it's a mix of stage of the funnel plus customer behavior that gives you this new dimension that if you already reached all of your A/B testing, if you feel like you've already done everything that you can still push it further as Amazon is releasing more metrics on specific customer behavior and segmentation. Basically, you're just going to segment your audience. You're going to know your audience better. And that's how you can push it.
I've seen a lot of, like if you're creating a brand tailored promo or you're looking at the audience insights and you have, like promising customers or, lapsed and cart abandoners and that sort of thing. But those aren't explicit segments that you can target in ads. Like, are you doing sort of this cluster of ad activities to try to get, someone who's a promising customer and then sort of looking at that same equivalent cohort in brand analytics to see like, have I moved that total number? I'm just curious, like, how do you square those two things together from the media side and then the brand analytics side?
Mm-hmm. You do have more and more targeting, especially for sponsored display campaigns that are coming out. For example, you can target people who are inclined to subscribe and save. So if you have a product that is based on subscription and you want to invest in the loyalty part of your funnel, then that's the type of things you can do. And then you can combine this with DSP. You can combine this with other campaigns that show your product to people who bought in the previous 90 days, 60 days. You can really tailor it based on your product and based on what you've seen people doing. And then you can put that together with what you see in Seller Central or Vendor Central with all the brand analytics, where they show you, okay, those people buy those products together. Those people are rebuying your product every 30 days. You combine all of this, you make the ads with the analytics, and that's where you get the results.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I remember seeing, in DSPN and AMC, like those sort of customer cohorts that have been available, I feel like for a while now, but the idea that I can have similar cohorts on the within, a seller platform and do merchandising that aligns with that I think that's like a cool alignment between both sides of the business.
Yeah. And I think like to kind of almost bring it full circle, if you think of the options that are available for brands to target customer segments on Amazon, that was never there before, right? And so it was always like, how do we go after, the people that we know are loyal to us? And Amazon's just kind of started rolling that out with the brand analytics platform. And so I think that is like another reason of why people should start thinking of Amazon as not just like an afterthought. You can get a lot more data now and you can plan accordingly for your brand and your products to have success on this platform, knowing that the majority of people, even if they do research or find a product on Instagram or through Google, that they're going to check Amazon to see if they have that listing because they can get it in 2 days with Prime shipping. It's just a super easy conversion path, And
right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it like, if we think about back to the beginning of our conversation where it's like, if you're only looking at ROAS, if you're only looking at my conversion rate, you're missing, am I growing in market customer, am I growing those things that I'm looking at the very top of that sort of brand analytics and DSP and AMC funnel? Are there other things that you like, either from you, Julian, or you, Lauren, like outside of the just like absolute count of customers that exist in each of those funnel stages? Like, are there other more top of the funnel or sort of like brand health metrics, either on the media side or just in general, that you like to look at to understand, like, are my branding efforts succeeding?
Well, you have the branded searches only, or just the branded search term. Like that's the most obvious one that you can look at. Yeah. And the new to brand metrics also, that's been existing for a while. This is a good one to look at too.
That, and like, it's a simple thing and there's not a ton of data on it, but just like your brand followers, the traction on your homepage, like what's the time that people are spending on your brand site? Like, are they learning about you or shopping? Are those things working for you as a brand, like with the efforts that you're putting into making sure that you're different from the competition or being cohesive, with other platforms?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, I feel like you could split this into your sort of leading indicators, which is like, my brand search terms, like what are my in-market audiences, like with any sort of awareness around me. And then your kind of lagging indicators, which is like, is my ratio, like my total spend portfolio of brand and lower funnel things, like a sustainable ongoing ratio to my business? And I know a lot of times we'll talk about, like, for CPG brands, like, is my lifetime value relative to my customer acquisition cost, including my branding spend, like, is that a healthy ratio that I can sustain over time? So it's a lot of things that come together.
It is. And then even something too, like being able to compare in brand analytics, like customer segments, say your top tier customers is the numbers like 50,000. And then your at-risk customers is 5,000. And so you're like, okay, well, I've got way more top tier customers, than I do at risk. It doesn't mean I don't want to care about those at risk, but like it gives you perspective of like, okay, there's a lot of people that are fitting into good segments. And then if they're not, like, it gives you like why, what's going on? Why are these people, either not loyal or, they're one and done kind of a thing. What can we change to address that?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I like, and that brings up a general point here, which is like the idea that it's either sales channel or brand channel. Like, if we're being honest, there have always been elements of branding on Amazon, and I just think they've become more salient in the past, year, 18 months, 2 years maybe. And so I'm just curious, like, maybe a good place to wrap up here is like what things either that's recently rolled out or things that you feel like are coming, or anything that you're just particularly excited about as two folks that love like diving into this topic of branding with the clients that you work with. Like, anything that you feel like will be game changers, or like perhaps isn't 100% proven, but you're excited to test out. Like, what's exciting you in this space right now?
Quickly, I think for me, I'm very excited about the brand tailored promos and the ability to constantly have something running. And with a lot of my partners that I'm working with, they're open to almost like an evergreen strategy of brand tailored promos. And so it's, if we went after cart abandoners for 3 weeks, the next target is top tier customers. And then from there, it's at risk. And so you're always able to test that. And, getting as much data on this as possible is going to help drive insights to what's working or what's not working with different people on Amazon. So that for me is just trying to use that as much as possible, because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that development is so interesting, because if you think of like another way of doing that same effect is dynamic pricing, right? Like, information about that customer and you're going to price accordingly, which people hate, right? Like, people hate Uber surge pricing. And it's like something that retailers have tested, and then like it always causes pushback. But I think Amazon has created the same thing where it's like, you as the brand, you get to determine how you're going to price this thing via merchandising based on customer behavior, and nobody blinks an eye, right? Like, it's like, well, I deserve this because I put this product in my cart, so give me 10% off, So it's just interesting how they're like able to get this optimal economic model without a lot of the bad taste of like a dynamic pricing. So I think we'll have another episode soon about brand tailored promos, but I like, I'm very bullish.
You know what's coming is like the text messages of like, hey, we saw that you put this in your cart, like come back, here's another 5% off.
Yeah, exactly. Andy Jassy showing up to your door with a box. Yeah. Laurie, what about on your side? Like, what are the things that have you jazzed on the branding front?
Yeah, I think I'm just really excited about the ability to be more specific with the targeting. Like, if you are a brand and you have very clear visuals, I will be able to add them inside the campaigns and you will be able to see it across Amazon. It's really hard to be unique in Amazon. I mean, it's weird because Amazon doesn't want you to be unique, but you still have to make your brand unique to separate yourself from others. So there's like this very thin line. And I feel like in the campaigns now, sponsor display, sponsor brand videos, you have more and more flexibility to make your brand pop out. And that will create so much more conversion if you have a strong brand than the regular, just plain product and product title and price. If you're able to control this a little bit better, to show the price difference, for example, when you do sales, to show subscribe and sales and save, if you have more control over that, I feel like the conversion rates are going to explode and the reward for the brand that actually invested in their brand on Amazon will be significant. So I really want to see that happen.
Yeah. I feel like that's like part of the reason why people thought of Amazon historically as a sales channel is like it sort of flattened your brand. All the products look the same. They were all on white backgrounds, that sort of thing. And now it's like when sponsor brand videos came out, people were like, this is crazy. And then now sponsor brand and sponsor display, sponsor video, where it's like people are really pushing the boundaries of that with storefront, with brand story, with A+, like
exactly.
They can integrate videos. It's an exciting time.
And even just that quick example, think of like, it's almost night and day traditional A+ versus premium A+. Like you're playing in a whole new ballgame by being able to add video content and interactive sliders and all of that on your product page. That is, it makes
me want to buy the product. It doesn't matter the product. I'll buy it.
Right. That you've got the capabilities to create something that's worth having, all of this content and to get people to stick around and navigate through, that to learn more about, I didn't even know they sold X or Y or whatever.
Yeah. So it seems less hacky than when people tried to like sneak things into a main image or like on Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, this
like a
great.
Small child on the main image.
Exactly.
It's an airport.
Laurie, Julian, this was a ton of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time to lend your expertise here. I can't wait to see what develops around the cool video, around the cool creatives, around all the brand tailored promo stuff. That's a lot of meat here. So we'll have to catch up soon on this in the future. But in the meantime, thanks to the both of you. This was fun.
Thank you. Super excited.
Yeah, this was a blast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.